In the year 2000, I moved away from my hometown of Wichita Falls, Texas. Since then, I've made it a point to visit home as frequently as possible. Some years I've been better than others, but lately, I guess because I'm getting older, the draw to going back home has only increased. Every time I set foot in my childhood home, instantly I'm transported back in time. A time to when I would wake up, go to the kitchen, and if I were lucky, I would be able to sit down at the kitchen table with both my grandparents. Hot steaming coffee, a good breakfast, and always awesome conversation. Now when I go back home, that house now belongs to my oldest sister, and she often is the one that I am having coffee with and having breakfast with and talking about old times, visiting old haunts. And it's with her that often we're going back and forth on memories. And when I go back and forth on memories, it really does, especially when I'm walking around downtown, make me want to keep digging deeper, not only into my own memories, but into the memories of the city itself. With the city's initiative to regentrify downtown, there's a lot of new places that have popped up in older historical buildings. Antique shops, pubs, cafes, and diners, art galleries. And as I make my way through these new venues for me, there's still the undercurrent of historical mystery. And it was at a new vintage place called Alley Cats that I was able to rediscover my city in a different way. Before we checked out, my sister found a book she thought I would like. And reading this book, I started doing what I always do, what most of us do, I think, in this day of internet access with information readily available at my fingertips. I started Googling for images of the structures, the places that the author, who had grown up in Wichita Falls, had mentioned in his books. Many I was familiar with and just wanted to see how they looked during those years. Others I was not as familiar with, so I wanted to see if I could find images that could help me paint the picture of what he was talking about. And it was during these Google searches that I would stumble across other links to other websites, podcasts, books, and they would often be about the history of Wichita Falls, but they also were about cold cases, unsolved crimes in the city and county. There was one in particular that I just could not stop reviewing, and that is the case that I would like to talk to you about today. If you knew the kind of person I was, you would know that I'll find the time, even within a few short hours, to start finding answers to questions I have. And that was no different with this case that I'm about to share with you. While I was scouring the internet for what was out there, I was able to come across a few podcasts and some news articles and a couple of videos. And while they were all very helpful, very few presented little information, and the most compelling information, the alleged victim. And it was here, as in other forums, that I found out a lot of information, not just on the post, but mainly in the comments themselves. From the drive back home with this newfound interest, I was able to listen to whatever I could that could somehow relate to the case, indirectly or directly. I re-listened to those podcasts, listened to the interviews or the videos that were available online. And then I also listened to some podcasts on true crime investigations that mainly dealt with drowning, just to see if there was something, some kind of process that may have been overlooked, that may not have been conducted in this case. Was there any new technology? Were there any new investigative questions or processes that could be considered? Whatever I could find in that 6-hour drive, I was mentally taking note. As soon as I came home and I greeted my family, I spent a few hours with them, and then during bedtime, I brought out my iPad and I continued searching and searching and searching. I woke up this morning and I couldn't wait to do that all over again. And while I don't know how great of a job I am going to do presenting this case, what really is compelling me to is that it isn't, in my humble opinion, given as much attention as other cold cases in my hometown as others, but that it also hasn't been presented in a way I feel that the mother is passionately pleading to have it investigated and treated. And as a mother myself, and compels me to want to present it from the heart of a mother and from the heart of a fellow Wichitan. Today, I want to speak directly to something that's been weighing heavy on my heart. When it comes to investigating homicides and accidental deaths, especially involving someone's child, whether they're 6 or 60, I believe it should be required that the officers and detectives working the case sit down with the families, not just for facts, not just for statements, but to hear stories, to see photos, to feel the weight of the loss through the eyes of the people who love them most. Because when we lose someone and then face investigators who seem cold, detached, or mechanical, it's not just painful, it's soul-crushing. Families already broken by grief can be shattered further by the feeling that their loved one's life is just another case number. It was this picture that made me realize that I couldn't let this story go. You see, I have a daughter. While now she's an older teenager, when she was 2, 3, and 4, she loved the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I have so many pictures of her where she is dressed as a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. She's wearing pajamas. She's wearing costumes. She's pretending. She's carrying her lunchbox, her backpacks, her pillowcase, her blankie. And it made me further engage with this story once I saw that precious photo of Tamara dressed very similarly. I'm going to start this part of the podcast. In fact, I may more than likely have to break this up into 2 episodes, with this one laying down the foundation of what has happened. Next, I would like to introduce what could have been going on during the year of 2007 in the city, especially within the Wichita Falls Police Department itself, that may have set up a perfect storm for everything going perfectly wrong. And then I'd also like to talk about some of the discrepancies in this case. And lastly, I would also like to bring in what I have found doing my own research to see how we can shed some fresh light on this very cold case that to some has been solved and to others is still a mystery.
Autopsy reports and the WFPD ruled this case an accidental drowning, the family believes there's much more to it. This is the mysterious death of Tamara Holcknecht.
I thought we were just going to go out for a bike ride. So we came over here and I went and looked and I saw something laying there and I saw like garage pants on it. So I went over there and looked and it looked like a dead body. It was face down and it had like yellow skin with black spots on it.
On July 28, 2021, a local TV station, KFDX, in Wichita Falls, Texas, had a reporter who wanted to make sure that Tamara's story was put back into the public spotlight to gain more attention. In fact, on Justice for Tamara, the Facebook page, the reporter actually reached out to the family and friends to see if anyone would be willing to talk to him for this story so that he could help out. Looking at the video now on YouTube, it's really sad to see that just 8 months ago, someone commented, "Miss you," with an exclamation mark.
When she was a baby, she would make a squeaking sound, and we called her Little Mousy, and it kind of stuck with her. She didn't want me to call her Mousy in front of her friends when she got older. No, that was a no-no. But I could call her Mousy when we were by ourselves. She was a very happy girl. She never met a stranger. She could just pick up a conversation with anyone. She loved everyone. The last time I talked to her was on February the 25th, and she was supposed to come over the very next day and see her sister and I, but she never made it. She was asking if I had a movie, because she wanted to watch a movie called The Game, and I had it, but I didn't take it to her. I wish I would have. But she became a missing person, official missing person, on March the 9th in both Clay County and Wichita County. My daughter had called to see if I'd heard from her because she hadn't, and I thought maybe she'd been in her dad's because I hadn't heard from her for that long. But I knew something was wrong. I knew. Sometimes she'd go like a week, I wouldn't hear from her. But my family members would usually say, they had seen her and stuff. But she'd go stay with friends, and so, but to be gone that long, and then like my dad and I were talking about like different things would happen or whatever, like St. Patrick's Day, because she loved get-togethers and stuff. And then my daughter's birthday was the 21st, and she didn't tell her happy birthday or nothing.
Usually when special occasions and holidays pass, that's when family and friends and even police departments become very suspicious and very concerned about a missing person not reaching out. Because usually, if someone had been lying low or decided to just take some time off, they would use these days as the days to keep in touch, even if it was to pick up the phone and say happy birthday, to say happy Mother's Day, Merry Christmas. So when Tamara's sister's birthday passed with no phone call, the family became very alarmed.
I had gone out to the garage and I had my phone on me, and my phone rang, and it was my friend Julie, and she said, "Did you see the news?" I said, "No, what?" So I ran in the house, I turned on the news, and that's whenever they said they had found a body out by Shepherd, close right within yards of where she was staying.
We walked down there, and I said, "Show me where," and they did, and I said, "Let's not get too close." You could smell. The smell is just horrendous.
They were out there and they smelt a smell that they weren't familiar with, and that's when they investigated themselves. Bodies found. They were able to contact authorities, and so we responded out there, the detectives, crime scene units, and began the investigation. What we want to do anytime we have a deceased person, we call it unattended death, we want to rule out foul play. So we investigate these kind of things as if they are homicides, and we begin to rule out things that would lead to that finding, because we don't want to assume anything and then drive off and then leave an open case that was actually a homicide that we ruled something else, a suicide or just an accidental death. Number one, it was the physical evidence of her body. The detectives found no sign, and including the medical examiner, no sign of any kind of damage to the body that was trauma that would fit someone attacking her or assaulting her that would have caused the death. And then the actual autopsy results where the doctor ruled it as an accidental drowning. It was the cause of death. So that, for us, ruled out a homicide.
No, it wasn't an accident. You don't just end up out in a pond fully clothed in the winter. Well, I knew she was hanging around with some really bad people, and I told her that. And I remember I was driving down the freeway when I was taking her back over there to that where she was staying by the base. I said, "You need to stay away from those people that she'd been hanging out with. She deserves justice. She deserves that. She so deserves justice. She didn't deserve to die like that in the most horrible way in a pond." She did not die out there. She was placed out there. The person that I've been told was involved is still talking about it all the way in Wisconsin. It was a year ago in March that guy in Wisconsin contacted me because he was sitting at a bar with this woman said she'd been to prison for killing Tamara Holcknecht in Wichita Falls.
There were so many names that the officers and detectives talked to. I can't remember that name. It sounds familiar, and I definitely could not tell you what part she was expected to have played by the parents who suspect her. I just can't remember that. But I know they talked to several people. That name does sound familiar.
The name. The name is something that is not mentioned in this interview, but based on the information that Tamara's mom gave, I am convinced that I understand based on the comments in the Facebook page who she is talking about here, both the man and the woman. While I won't present their names now, I do expect to bring them to your attention in episode 2.
It's been closed due to the accidental drowning. Our cold case Detective John Laughlin, is looking at some things, mainly just to get some things straightened out with the ME who did the autopsy. Nothing that would change our minds that it's a homicide.
Detective Laughlin. When I looked up Detective Laughlin, I discovered that he retired and is no longer over the crime scenes unit or the cold case unit. In fact, there is another replacement to take over this case and others. But what I have discovered when it comes to Detective Laughlin is pretty surprising. Not in a nefarious way, at least not up until this point of my research, more like in a cherry-picking kind of way, meaning when I look at the cases that he has talked about, I wonder why those get so much more attention than this one.
But we're looking at some things like, is it possible that she did drown there, or could she had died somewhere else and been moved there by someone else that doesn't want the police to show up where she actually died and was brought to that pond? Is that possible? And so that's one of the things that Detective Laughlin's looking at right now. And he's trying to reach out to that doctor, and that's the process he's in right now. There could be criminal charges filed on that person. Wouldn't be for homicide or for murder, but it could be for tampering with evidence or some other charges there as well, obstructing our investigation. So that would be something that we would want to know to get to the bottom of it, because we know family members have questions. We always want to bring closure to that, any questions they may have. And so that's why John is furthering this a little bit, just digging a little bit more to get more answers about the death itself. Not that we think that she was murdered, but could she had been moved, or is this something where the doctor is confident that she was in this water alive at one time and then drowned?
To answer questions for the families, it's not that they believe that she was murdered, but that the accidental death may have some questions that, if answered, may comfort the family. That was the explanation given here on why, if the case was closed and the medical examiner had believed that this was an accidental drowning, why continue to pursue certain leads?
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make
She used to sing You Are My Sunshine to me all the time.
eyes are great. You'll never know.
So still to this day when you hear that song,
It just breaks my heart.
Please don't take my sunshine away.
Again, if it was so cut and dry, why did Crime Stoppers take the time to promote this case in order to get more leads? Was it really that important to uncover more details about an accidental death, an accidental drowning? Was a billboard necessary if the police believed that it was indeed an accidental death and nothing was going to change their mind that it was a homicide? What is not mentioned here in this local news coverage is that Detective John Laughlin had discovered something in the medical examiner's report. And it would be this discovery that, once the family became aware of it, would continue to plant more doubt and more suspicions that their daughter, their cousin, their niece, their friend, their family, their loved one had not accidentally died in that pond on March 28th, 2007. Join me on Thursday as I continue telling you the story of a family in grief and what we can do to help them to get further answers, to not necessarily bring closure, because what I have found to be true is that there's really no such thing as closure, but there is at least the comfort in knowing that your loved one has received some type of justice here on earth.